Yeah, so absolutely, there's a lot of work's going to happen with the governments here as well, and that's true. And to be honest, we've already worked on government-funded projects. We also co-fund into a cooperative research centre here in Australia, where we're working with some of the best universities in Australia. That's government-funded, and we're putting some funds into that to do R&D that's working on this. And we've been winning some government grants to deliver our technology. So absolutely, governments are going to be really important in this. And, it's really interesting because if you look at the electricity networks, pretty much all electricity networks, actually, no, it's not entirely true, but most electricity networks evolved to become government owned. Then they got devolved to become privatized again. At the very beginning, Edison was producing his grids, and they were in the major cities. And so they were actually privately owned independent grids in smaller cities in the US, which is really, really interesting. So we're kind of going back to more of that model before, which is really interesting. So I think when we talk about governments
at a different scale,
yeah, exactly. At a far bigger scale, but a much more localized but interactive scale.
Exactly. And one thing, sorry to jump in, but that is quite a common pattern of societal and technological evolution. Yeah. I think people have this perspective that we're always going like this, but the way it is actually a lot more of a pendulum, and as something is unlocked, and that's kind of what Holochain is saying with the capacity for distributed applications. It's kind of like you get to the heavily centralized world, you actually move way closer back to how things used to look with local servers, except suddenly you don't have local servers, you have a completely interconnected network. So it's like you almost have the original heavily centralized move back to distributed. And then of course, as you've moved there and that world starts to scale and expand 10, 15, 20 years, something's going to draw you back to a different pattern, I completely get where you're coming from anyway, sorry for interrupting.
No, David, it's so true. And it's really interesting, right? That pendulum, as you described there, of just socio-technical transitions. That's just the way it works, because whenever something becomes really useful and really, but is not fully kind of understood by regulation and by government, it's going to get pulled in by regulation. And regulation does a lot of good stuff. Like, it makes sure people are safe. It makes sure that nothing untoward is happening. That's really good. But then it tends to sometimes make things claustrophobic, slows things down, slows down innovation. Then it gets privatized first, and then it gets decentralized and pushed back out even further. So I really like that. But in this meantime, but this is interesting, right? Because we can talk about the theory of those things, but when you're doing it, the reality is you have to have a lot of conversations with everyone who's already in it, who are in government and who are in big industry doing this. And they're really good, productive conversations, because there's also a bunch of individuals there who see that same pattern, who want to see this happen as well. So yeah, we're very excited about that.